And I'd like to ask our city attorney to report out, please.
Mayor, I'd be happy to do that. City Council met in closed session. We had one item of anticipated litigation. You received a briefing from the city attorney. There was no reportable action. I do want to add for the public that Councilmember Fish is joining and did join our closed session via teleconference as advertised on the agenda. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. We move to our regular meeting of November 21st. May we have the roll call, please?
Sorry, Mayor. Councilmember Chavez?
Here.
Councilmember Fish is absent. Councilmember Yu?
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Mann?
Here.
Mayor Stearns West?
Here.
Move to excuse Councilmember Fish for cause.
Second.
Okay, it's moved and seconded. We move to item 3, our invocation. We have this evening with us Pastor Jim Walden from the First Baptist Church located at 6019 Baldwin Avenue, and he will provide the invocation. Welcome, Pastor.
Thank you so much for this privilege of being here. Let's pray together. Father, this is such a great time of Thanksgiving. You have been so good to America. You have kept us and protected us from our founding days even to now. And we want to ask for your continued protection over us as a nation, as a state, as a city. Thank you for this council and this meeting tonight. Thank you for the freedoms that we have. And I ask that you would continue to endow us with your wisdom. Thank you, Lord, for what's coming in a couple days when we'll gather with friends and family and indeed give you thanks for how good you are and what you've done for us. Bless this night. In your precious name, Jesus, we pray. Amen.
Amen. Pastor Walden, do you want to briefly tell us about the lighting?
Yes, most folks are probably upset about Baldwin Avenue tonight, but we are lighting our bell tower for Christmas. We're having a lighting ceremony Sunday night. If you'd like to come at 5 o'clock, we'll officially light it up to enjoy the Christmas holiday season with all of you. Thanks.
Thank you. Okay, I'd like to invite Troop 161, who will be leading us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Senior Patrol Leader Anthony Hahn will be the caller, and Scouts Christopher Dew, Duncan Vergara, Joshua Sue, Lucas Tiet will present the flags. Gentlemen?
Color guard, attention. Color guard, front and center. Forward march. Halt. Please post the colors. Please post the state flags. All those in uniform, please salute. All those not in uniform, please place your right hand over your heart. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Ready? Begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
2. Color guard, reform. Color guard, retreat. Halt. Color guard dismissed. The audience may now be seated.
Thank you, gentlemen. We move to item 6. Oh, I'm sorry, item 5. An update from our youth committee. And can you come on up?
Good evening. My name is Justin Chai, and I'm reporting on Youth Committee's Quality of Life seminars. So, the goal of Youth Committee's Quality of Life seminars is to provide an open forum for dialogue with the community, specifically targeting the youth. The topics we will choose are designed to engage and inform the youth on important topics that are relevant to them and to provide them a platform that allows them, the youth, to voice their ideas and opinions. And Randy will talk more about our next session.
So our first seminar will be on traffic safety around the city. It will be on December 14th at the Temple City Library from 4 to 5:30 p.m. And there will be a panel, and the format will be an open forum for a discussion, and we will have speakers, mostly confirmed from teachers and security at the high school, and hopefully a crossing guard. And we will be providing food and a raffle.
Hi, my name is Zoe Sue. I'm part of the Lights on Temple City working group. So this year we will be promoting the Little Free Libraries again, and we will be handing out bookmarks to let people know that they should leave a book whenever they take a book. We will also be promoting the Quality of Life pop-up seminars. Lastly, we will be handing out traffic and public safety surveys to get feedback from the public regarding their concerns on pedestrians and traffic in the community.
Hi, good evening. My name is Christy Wong, and I would like to share our experience for the mentorship program. We have gone to JPIA, St. Gabriel COG, and we've been to the Camellia Festival kickoff. Members feel like this experience has been very rewarding, and we look forward to continuing on shadowing council. Thank you.
Is that it?
Good job.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Brandy, I just have a question. On the little libraries, has the committee ever thought about maybe having someone who could build those for those of us who are less handy if the materials were provided so that we could get more of those little libraries in our city?
Well, I'm part of like that working group, and that's like another one of our objectives this year, besides working on Lights on TC. And a Boy Scout for his Eagle Project has offered to help build more free little libraries for us as like his Eagle Scout project. And we also have another one of the churches who is interested, but we need like help building it, supplies, materials, and more experienced people, I guess, like who are experienced with like woodworking and stuff to help us build and like expand the libraries. Yeah.
Okay, great, thank you.
I
Well,
think,
I'd like
I think I'll nominate Mr. O'Leary to be part of that. How's that?
Tell Tom that
Yeah,
I'll
we'll get you
do
help.
a sample one and I'll
Yeah.
buy the materials.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
All right.
Really
I'd
appreciate
love
it.
to have one on my street.
Thank you.
Okay, we'd be really interested for you to have one. Thank
Okay,
you.
thank you. Okay,
Although I don't know, on your street, they might steal it. I had to throw that in, of course, yeah.
I don't know, we have an awful lot of sheriffs that come up on my street.
Well, that's a good
so
thing.
I feel very safe.
Yeah, well, you should.
We move to item 7, our consent calendar. Oh, but before that, we should do item 6, which is public comments on items not listed on the agenda. I'm sorry, I think it's too much Dayquil that I've had today. But we do have one, and Lucy, would you like to come up? Steve, do you have one too?
Yeah.
Okay, here it is. So Lucy and then Steve.
No wonder you sound congested. Good evening. I don't have my Neighborhood Watch shirt because I rushed here, but I want to take this opportunity because we don't have a Neighborhood Watch meeting this month or next month, that end of the year is near. A lot of people are doing their Christmas shopping, so we want to remind everybody to be diligent, diligent, diligent. You see something, you say something. Make sure you turn on, it's getting very, very dark very early. Turn on your porch lights, front, back porch lights. Have the motion sensor lights installed in deep driveways if you don't have one. Make sure, if you go on vacations, ask the station for patrol checks. Just be on alert, let your neighbors know, have them watch out for you. This is when, unfortunately, sometimes a lot of the burglaries will happen because it's the end of the year again. People are doing their shopping or people are taking vacation. So please, I want to remind everybody, stay diligent and look out for your neighbors because your neighbors are your best friends. Thanks.
Thank you. When Lucy mentioned that, I know we relaxed the parking for holidays in our neighborhoods. And I think that seems to be an opportune time for cars that shouldn't be there that blend in. So I'm wondering if, maybe not for this year, it's short notice, but maybe next year, that families who are having extended guests coming and staying with them overnight maybe could pick up a temporary Temple City pass. But maybe just something to think about, to be able to put on their cars for that extended period. I don't think it would cost that much, but anyway, something to maybe think about. Okay, Steve?
Yes. Mayor Sternquist, Mayor Pro Tem Mann, council members, city staff. I've been noticing this the last 6 months, and I've noticed this for the last couple of years. The tow companies aren't cleaning up the mess, including broken glass, fuel in the roadway, like last night on Las Tunas between Alessandro and Encinita. There was an accident where a parked car got hit, and there was glass all over the place. There's fuel. They just took it and swept some of it into the storm drain. And, that goes back to our water quality laws. There's, like we all know, there's thresholds to meet, and the tow companies are not helping us meet them at all. They just leave the stuff there, sometimes push some of it in the drain, leave the rest of it on the street. I've seen this time and time again, and I call the city, Public Works goes out there and cleans it up. And it's supposed to be the tow company's job, and they're not doing it. We had Five Star Towing and Valley View Towing out there, two different companies. They didn't even clean it. The Valley View guy just pushed some of it into the storm drain. The other guy just loaded up his car, drove off. That's not professional. There was another tow company that's in Azusa that I caught doing that in the county area, and I called them, and I told them that there's water quality laws to pass. And I don't know if they've cleaned up their act, but this is becoming a real problem in the city when there's an accident. They're not cleaning up at all. And it needs to be done. Secondly, there's a church across from St. Luke's that the problems there have gotten a lot worse with the homeless. Today after 9 o'clock mass, there were 3 of them out there hanging out in the vestibule, or actually outside the vestibule on the benches. Well, if I go by there tonight and they're sleeping, we're starting over the same problem we had before of another homeless person that slept there and caused problems there at the church. On one weekend, I saw one guy acting crazy there on Cloverleaf. He jumped on a car, fell down, gets up, walking from side by side. He's probably on drugs or whatever. I called the sheriff's department. They dealt with it. There was a second guy doing basically the same thing. That church is drawing these people up, and it's getting a lot worse. And it concerns me, it concerns the deputies, because they have to deal with this. And I am going to try, I can't do it next week, but the week after, the first week of December, schedule a meeting with Brian and Michael Forbes. I'd like to be there, and Sergeant Miranda, so we can deal with this and come up with a plan. This can't go on any longer there. It's
This is
causing a
on the
lot of problems in the area.
church's property?
The church across from St. Luke's is the one that they're letting the homeless come in.
But it's on church property.
Yeah, but they come off the property and it causes problems. I've seen violations of their CUP there, where they're not supposed to have alcohol. 6 months ago, they had alcohol there at 10 o'clock at night, and not even supposed to be out there at 10 o'clock at night.
Okay, Steve, the 3 minutes
All
are
right,
up.
thank you.
Okay, is any other public comments? Okay. Going to close public comments and move to item 7, consent calendar.
Move to approve.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Any objections? Okay, so moved. We move to item 8, a public hearing, introduction and first reading of the ordinance number 17-1026, amending Title 4 and 9 of the Temple City Municipal Code, to adopt regulations or unattended collection boxes and other collection and recycling facilities, and adoption of Resolution 17-5295 to adopt a related permit fee.
Mayor Sternquist, members of the council, before you is a ordinance adopted by the Planning Commission as well to address a community issue that we've been hearing about for several years in our community preservation officers dealing with on an ongoing basis. We cannot get rid of collection boxes. There are certain rights, First Amendment rights and others, but we can regulate time, place, and manner. And that's essentially what we're doing with this ordinance, is regulating time, place, and manner to have some better control over that. And our planning manager will go over in an overview of what the ordinance does in comparison to what we don't have right now. So with that, Scott?
Yes. Good evening, Mayor and members of the City Council. As the planning manager, I also oversee community preservation, and I can speak to the number of problems we've had in the community with these unattended collection boxes. We have tried to use the existing laws that we have in place to deal with them in the past, and it's become increasingly more difficult to regulate these facilities under our existing laws. That's why we're recommending a new ordinance to help regulate these. We often find that the boxes are placed in the public right-of-way. They're often placed on private property without the owner's permission. They're placed in landscape planners that are required by the code. Either the owner of the box or the owner of the property do not often maintain them. The boxes typically are not emptied often enough, and which causes items to overflow into the ground. That then creates an attractive nuisance. People start scavenging through them, and trash starts to blow onto neighboring sites. And we also find them to be vandalized. So because of these issues, we're recommending a new permit process for unattended collection boxes. These would be reviewed and approved by the Community Development Director. The application would require the approval of the property owner and would also require a maintenance plan that could be reviewed by the Community Development Director. The permit would expire annually so that we can go through a renewal process to make sure that the sites are being maintained properly, that there haven't been public nuisance complaints against the site, and would give us the opportunity to review those on an annual basis.
Do we have a new Best Buy in town?
This is not one in Temple City,
okay,
just
I
an
didn't think so.
example.
I was like, wait a minute. Okay. We don't have any of the collection boxes that big, do we?
Not that size.
Do you have the representative of what we have in the city, maybe?
Some here
Okay,
are
yeah.
ones that we
Oh.
typically find.
And more of those yellow boxes, I think, right?
We have some of the yellow, orange, and blue boxes.
Oh,
Those are
okay.
the ones we see the most.
Okay.
Before we go to the proposed regulation, you're saying that they're putting these boxes there without the owner's permission. Now, if somebody put some in, what would they do if they showed up without the permission? Can the owner call and the city, and will we take them away?
Well, no. What we recommend is that the owner of the property call the facility and tell them to come and pick up the box. And then often they'll pick up the box and move it to another site a few lots down or to somewhere else in the city.
I see.
Yeah,
They just drop them wherever they want, basically?
Wow.
for the most part.
Okay.
I always thought that the property owners got money for having it on their property. Is that not true?
I'm not aware of any situation like that.
Okay.
I know of one facility, a new facility in Temple City that does have a lease agreement with the property owner. I don't know if there's an exchange of money within that, or it's just an approval.
You mentioned a maintenance plan that might be reviewed, so I guess that would entail like frequency of pickup, maintenance of the surrounding, the area around it, so it doesn't look like a nuisance.
That's correct. Yeah, there are some recommendations in the ordinance about what the maintenance plan should include, such as you mentioned, how often it should be maintained, and then the director would have the ability to modify the permit or revoke it if it's not being maintained in an adequate way. The permit cannot be approved for a site if there already are public nuisances that are outstanding on the site as well. The ordinance includes buffers from residences, so there's a 50-foot buffer requirement from any residence and a 500-foot distance between any other box. The site has to be occupied. There cannot be a vacant site. They cannot be placed in the public right-of-way within 5 feet of the right-of-way or in landscaping, and must be 5 feet from a property line. And they cannot block walkways, driveways, and fire lanes and similar access points.
Would that also include parking spaces?
Yes, they cannot be in required parking spaces. If a site has excess parking, they can provide it there. There is only one UCB that is permitted per parcel. They have to be waterproof, rust-proof. Sometimes we see them made of plywood, so those site types would not be allowed. They have to have a lock so that people cannot go into them and remove the material, and they cannot be more than 7 feet by 6 feet by 6 feet. So that's the sign. There has to be a sign on the box that includes what materials are accepted and information on how to contact the operator and how to contact the city if there's a complaint about the box. So those are the regulations that are required for the UCB. While we opened up the issue of UCBs, because they deal with recycling materials and donations, we felt it was appropriate to expand the ordinance into to clarify our regulations on other similar facilities. So we looked at 2 other types of facilities, actually a third one as well. The first is a reverse vending machine. That's like the image on the bottom left side of your screen. Typically, these are found inside or maybe just outside of a supermarket under a canopy. They allow you to put in the beverage container, and then at the end you get a receipt that you take into the facility, and then you get a cash amount. The other ones at the bottom of the screen, the shipping container, the dual reverse vending machine, and the truck, these would be considered collection facilities. So the reverse vending machine would require a zoning clearance. That's something that's approved by staff. The other 3 would require conditional use permit. They both have to be 50 feet from a residence. The smaller facility, the one to the left, the reverse vending machine, has to be at least 20 feet from the public right-of-way and have a 5-foot setback from a property line. The other ones, the collection facilities, have to be 45 feet from the public right-of-way. And the idea there is because they're so much larger, we want additional distance from the right-of-way. And they do have to be screened from the right-of-way with landscaping.
Scott, what effect, if any, does these regulations have on our collection facility at Ralph's?
Unfortunately, that one already has an entitlement.
Okay.
So we can't supersede the entitlement that's already existing. But if they came in to modify it, or if we had a new facility in town, these requirements would apply.
All right.
The reverse vending machines can't block parking, driveway, walkways, or the like. Same with the collection facilities. The reverse vending machines are smaller. They're about 50 square feet in size, so that's the maximum. They're typically smaller than that. The collection facilities, because they're about the size of a shipping container, they're about 500 square feet in size. Anything larger than 500 square feet is considered, you'll see it in the next slide, it's considered a material recycling plant. There are hours of operations for reverse vending machines. Basically, because they're attached to the use, like the grocery store, they just have to have the same hours as the grocery store. For the collection facilities, if there's a residence within 100 feet, they're limited to the hours of 9 a.m. to 7 p.m. And then a material recycling plant is where you recycle goods in a more of an industrial way. They're prohibited in all commercial and residential zones. We're recommending a CUP for all of these types of facilities. And at that point, you could set performance standards, operational standards, maintenance standards through the CUP process. This did go before the Planning Commission on October 10th. They recommended approval without any changes. So staff is recommending that the City Council introduce for first reading by title only and waive further reading of this ordinance. Schedule the second reading for December 5th and adopt the resolution. The resolution is for the adoption of a fee to pay for staff to review the permit application. There's both a one-time fee at the beginning, and then about half that price is the renewal fee.
Thank you. Do we have any questions?
No.
William?
So the if I understand correctly, for the one that requires a zoning clearance, that's basically done by staff.
Yes.
Okay, and then the CUP goes through Planning Commission. Okay, and so another question I had was in the staff report, it seems like it's really hard for us to get in touch with the operators or the owners of these collection boxes. So I wasn't sure, reading through the ordinance, if a failure to respond to a complaint is considered to be non-compliant. And I guess as related to that is, can we make that something that we can enforce? Because I'm just trying to imagine, okay, let's say we do pass this into, we do eventually pass this into law. You know, what would actually happen with the many that are in our city right now that may be non-compliant? And I'm just trying to imagine, like, what type of process we're going to have to go through to bring them into compliance.
So this ordinance does include its own revocation requirements. That's on page 8 of Exhibit A. Within the revocation requirements, we only need to show that they're not meeting the requirements of the ordinance. At that point, we can give them a 15-day warning to bring the project into compliance with the ordinance. If it's not, the box has to be removed within that 15-day period, at the end of the 15-day period. Or if it's not, city staff can remove it and hold it for another 14 days, and then we can dispose of it.
Okay, so there is a time that they have to respond?
Yes.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
I didn't catch that.
And to follow up on that, so let's say we pass this ordinance tonight and through second reading and became law. Do we have to do anything to the collection boxes already located within the city? That we'll send them notices and you're in violation because you obviously don't have a permit to do so, and then that's when the enforcement that you just mentioned would take place.
So the ordinance includes a section, section 10. It says this applies to all existing UCBs. So within 60 days of the effective date of the ordinance, they need to come into compliance with this new code. So we will be notifying the property owners and the operators of the new code, telling them they have 60 days to comply. Otherwise, we will be going through the process to have them removed. The process to have them removed, if they're not in compliance, then we don't have to go through the revocation process. We can just tell them that it needs to be removed within 15 days.
Well, I imagine the ones who are in public ways, such as the pictures that you've been showing us, and they're situated on sidewalks and stuff, those, we don't actually need to wait for this ordinance. I mean, they're in public ways, they're in violation. They're blocking sidewalk and they're endangering, I guess, general public's welfare. We can just start hauling them away.
Yes, that's true. So Exhibit A on page 9, it does say, it does very clearly state that if something is left in the public right-of-way, they can be removed without prior notice to the owner. The same business day, we have to notify them that it's been removed, and then they have 14 days to pick it up from the city's yard.
Okay, good.
Tom?
No.
Vincent, that was it?
That's it. Yeah.
Okay, I don't have any questions. Going to open the public hearing. Steve?
Mayor Sternquist, Mayor Pro Tem Mann, council members, city staff. This really needs to be done. There's several of them right now that have problems. The one at Ralph's, the people impinge on the area where people drive through and you make a circle to try to find a parking space. I've come upon that several times, and when I got the CUP on that one, they're supposed to be taking 6 spaces, they're taking 8 spaces. And like I said, the people impinge right out into traffic. And that one has a lot of questions to me in my mind, whether it's been legally done in the first place. You know, the other one is the the collection boxes at Laura Zusa and Temple City Boulevard, 4800 Temple City Boulevard. I just put a complaint on that the other day. There's couches piled up there. There's clothes. It's just a real mess. There's actually, when the picture was taken of that machine, that area, there was only one machine. Now there's two machines. And the only distance between the property and those boxes is a block wall. And they're supposed to be so many feet, and there's not even any distance between the residents there. These are two of the most problematic ones there, and I think this ordinance will hopefully resolve the problems. I would say, you know, go ahead and pass it. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. Lucy?
Good evening again. Again, I don't have my shirt on, but as Neighborhood Watch area leaders, we've brought this issue to the City Council a few times, and we just want to say thank you to the city and for taking this up, and we hope that the City Council will support and vote unanimously to pass this ordinance, because these are really nuisances in our neighborhoods. Unfortunately, I concur with Steve. I wish there's something we can do with regard to the Ralph's Recycling Center, because that is the biggest issue we have that draws transients and homeless people. But we'll take whatever we can get. Thank you.
Thank you, Lucy. Okay, I'm going to close public hearing. Any last council comment? Nope.
No.
Can we have a council motion, please?
Mayor Sternquist, I would move that we introduce for first reading by title only and waive further reading of ordinance number 17-1026, amending Title 4 and 9 of the Temple City Municipal Code to adopt regulations for unattended collection boxes and other recycling and collection facilities, waive further reading of ordinance number 17-1026, and schedule the second reading of ordinance number 17-1026 for December 5th, 2017, and adopt Resolution 17-5295, amending the master fee and fine schedule for fiscal year 2018 to establish a new fee for UCB permits.
Second.
We have a second. Any objections? Okay, so moved. Peggy?
An ordinance of City Council of City of Temple City, ordinance number 17-1026, amending Title 4, Chapter 2, and Title 9, Chapter 1 of the Temple City Municipal Code pertaining to the regulation of unattended collection boxes, collection facilities, and reverse vending machines.
Thank you. We move to item 9, unfinished business.
Councilmember, Mayor, staff would like to recommend that we pull this item from the agenda, take it off calendar, let us rework it. After Director Burrows and I started to go through it after your last meeting and again looked at it today, there's a few other changes we would like to recommend to you in the body of the ordinance. We'd actually like to rewrite the appeal procedure and bring it back for your review subsequently.
Okay.
Do we need a motion to do so?
Yes, just a motion to take it off calendar.
Madam Mayor, I move that we table this item for the unfinished business, second reading and adoption of the tree ordinance, tree preservation and protection ordinance, to a future time when staff can bring it back with a better recommendation.
I'll second.
We have a second. Any objections? Okay, so moved. Item B, Los Angeles Community Choice Energy Program update.
Mayor,
And
Mayor Sternquist, members of the council, as we stated before, we would update you on a periodic basis related to this program. In the last couple of months, we've been learning a little bit more about how the program is working. Mr. Forbes will give you a little bit more detail about some other cities that have joined. But one of the big questions that came up related to this program was entering and leaving. So if you enter into the JPIA and you leave, what kind of liability does an agency fall under? So what we did learn, and Mr. Forbes will talk about this a little bit more, what we did learn is that there will be some level of liability if you do leave, and that liability will lie in the fact that this authority will be buying long-term energy contracts. And in the middle of those contract provisions, if an agency does leave, they will portion out a portion of that cost to the city based on how large the authority is. If it's, say, 100, and your proportion is 5%, they will portion out that cost for that. But that was one of the questions that was kind of remaining out there that we somewhat got answered. I wouldn't say it's a definitive answer related to that question, but that's one answer that's there. A few more agencies have joined most recently. Our recommendation is just to continue to watch it to implement. They still haven't hired an executive director yet either. So with that, I'll let Mr. Forbes kind of fill in any other gaps that we may have.
Before you get to that, when you say they, are you referring to Edison? Is that who's going to implement the
county?
Yeah, I'm sorry, Councilmember.
You referred to some if you leave early or.
I'm sorry, I'm related to if you leave the authority early. If you leave the Joint Powers Authority at any point.
Okay, there may be monetary ramifications from LACCE.
Correct.
Or from Edison.
No, from LACCE.
Oh, okay. Right.
So that just like and the flip side of that too is that Edison also is discussing the idea if there's stranded costs that they have related to long-term energy contracts that they've purchased, how they would deal with those stranded costs for agencies that are not part of the authority as well. That seems to me to be a matter that would be brought up by the CPUC, even though the California Public Utilities Commission has stayed silent on the issue of these types of authorities. If the regulated investor-owned utility authorities start essentially passing on some costs, I would expect the PUC to at least step in at some point and talk about how they would deal with the investor-owned utilities with that. So,
well, let me ask turn the question around. If there are a bunch of cities joining the JPAs and therefore they're enjoying the lower energy costs, however, the remaining cities and agencies who are still part of Edison, would Edison then have a right to go back to the PUC and say, well, my cost is higher because I'm selling less, or I'm selling at a lower cost, so I need to regain my my level of revenue or whatever to do my business. So does that mean that if you don't join, then there is a chance that energy costs may go up?
Theoretically, yeah. Edison has to go to the PUC and make a rate case, as you know, depending on the cycles on which they increase rates over time. So that could be an argument that an investor-owned utility could make to say, all right, this is happening around the state, this is happening around the Edison territories, we have these long-term contracts, we have less customers, therefore, but they'd have to make that rate case to the PUC.
Okay.
So is the LACCE trying to put Edison out of business? Is that the deal here? Or, I mean, obviously it appears to me that they're certainly want to be a competitor.
In the energy market and in terms of the actual power. So Edison will still control the distribution network. So the capital, the poles, the underground, underground, all the assets that are required for distribution, Edison will still own. What anybody will get who in Alhambra and a few other cities around us will be doing this in the next few months. All the customer will see an opt-in and opt-out, or not opt-out, excuse me, not opt-in, because once a city joins the authority, they have opted in all customers, both residential and commercial. You'd have to opt out. So that's what they're passing through. So this is, and as the staff report speaks to as well, there are no guaranteed rate savings by joining or remaining or joining. One of the things that the stated objective of this Joint Powers Authority is to provide an alternative to the renewable energy market as well. So that if a community really believes that, renewable energy and that Edison or the investor-owned utilities are not doing enough, that's a lot of the motivation for several Northern California cities, and this is where this kind of first cropped up. It was in Northern California as a model that's been kind of tested a bit. One of their primary policy goals was looking for a renewable energy portfolio that they could provide for their residents to pass along. Feeling as though the investor-owned utilities were only meeting the state mandates and what the PUC is requiring them to do. This was accelerated that effort along those lines. So I don't know if Mr. Forbes, did you have any? I may have stolen his thunder here. Is there anything else you wanted to add?
No, I think we've covered everything, so I'm happy to answer any additional questions.
Thank you, sir.
So based on the staff report, we know Los Angeles County, so the unincorporated areas, we have 9 cities, so 6 joined and 3 more looking. So do you know, aware of any other cities that might be thinking about that? Is there a deadline to join?
There's no deadline to join per se, but there is a deadline for cities to join as what they're calling an initial participant, which you're guaranteed not to have to front any money to join it, and the deadline for that is the end of December.
The end of December. So if we don't join now, that means that we won't be the first line of cities.
Correct.
There might be a cost for us to join.
There might be, but they haven't defined what that cost is. They haven't stated what those cost entries would be.
There's not guaranteed to be a cost. There may or may not be a cost depending on where the JPA is financially at the time that a city seeks to join.
So we have until December 27th, according to staff report, to join.
Correct.
Why are they setting a deadline to join?
When the JPA was set up, they determined at that time that, and I don't know where the 6 months came from, but it was determined to be that once the first city joins the JPA, that starts a 6-month clock. So the first city to join was Rolling Hills Estates on June 27th. So that started the 6-month clock, which runs out December 27th.
Are there any common factors or common things that these 6 cities have and that would cause them to join? I mean, they seem like a very mixed bag to me. You've got, Calabasas, Rolling Hills Estates, and then you go to a small city like Sierra Madre, West Hollywood. I mean, is there anything that's common between these cities of why they've joined? Has anybody looked at that? Or maybe to kind of instruct us as to why they are joining, and do we fit into that mold with Agoura Hills, Claremont, Downey? I mean, is there any rhyme or reason for this, for these cities to be joining?
Not that we've been able to identify. The different cities have, there's 2 primary motivations for cities to join. One being that there's a possibility of cost savings, not a guarantee, but a possibility of cost savings. The other motivation for some cities is the idea that it provides customers with more choices to purchase energy from renewable sources than what is offered through Edison. So cities or residents of cities that are particularly environmentally minded like to have the choice of purchasing up to 100% of their energy from renewable sources,
So that could
which
be
is
a
not
common thread, maybe. But
For some of them.
possibly, yeah, for some of them, yes.
you said there's no, I'm sorry, just one last question. You said there's no guarantee that the rates will go down, but is there a
Correct.
possibility they could go up as well? Or have they spoke to that issue?
There's no guarantee that they will go down. There is a possibility that they could go up. I don't think anyone's expecting that, but it is possible. It's all based on what the energy market does in the coming years. And as Mr. Cook mentioned, one of the issues that some of the investor-owned utilities are looking at now, Edison has made a point to try and remain neutral through the process so far. However, Pacific Gas and Electric and San Diego Gas and Electric, which are 2 other investor-owned utilities in the state, have been starting to make a push in Sacramento to have the issue addressed of what they view as an inequality between the stranded fees in their energy contracts, that they've entered contracts and purchased energy based on an expectation of having X number of customers, and if those customers start leaving to go to community choice aggregators, they're going to be stuck with extra energy that they may have to then resell in the market potentially at a loss. And then their argument is, if we're selling this energy at a loss, we're going to have to pass that on to our customers, and then they're going to have to pay more, which is not fair to them. So we need to look at some kind of cost-sharing arrangement where the community choice aggregators will have to eat back some of that cost. So if ends up being legislation or a PUC ruling or anything to that effect that deals with that issue, that could upset the financial assumptions that have been made to date and could potentially lead to increased costs later on.
Well, those are the initial concerns I had initially, where I can't see Edison just idly standing by while all their customers are taken from them. That doesn't make any sense to me. They're in a business, and of course, they're going to eventually have to stand up and be heard, I would think.
But this is actually where my point I was leaning is that as which time there's legislation that might be coming back, and either in the form of raising fees for the cities that had not joined, or some kind of cost sharing mechanism, still there, in my mind, there might be still a chance that if you join it now, then you may be exempt, because there's no legislation. PUC hadn't changed the rules on these things yet, on how these cooperative are operating. So, in my mind, actually, I think there's an advantage for us to really seriously consider joining. I mean, the LA County put in $10 million. That's not chump change. And,
Well, that doesn't mean it's right just because it's a lot of money.
No.
They may have made a mistake.
Granted, but
A $10 million mistake, maybe.
it could be, but LA County has a lot of buying power, and now you've got 9 other cities that are moving towards that point.
How many cities would be available to change?
Only the Edison, essentially the Edison cities. So the cities that have their own water and power are not water and power, our energy distributors and producers are not eligible for this program. So Glendale, Burbank, Los Angeles, Torrance, and a few others.
So how many cities, do we have an idea of how many cities would be eligible
I don't know if we
to join? We know that possibly
there's-
9, or is it
Yeah,
9 out of
there's
what?
88 or 89 cities in the county.
88 cities in
88
LA
cities
County.
in the county, and Burbank, Glendale, Pasadena, Long Beach, City of Los Angeles, Torrance.
Maybe about 80.
So 88 minus 6, 82 roughly, probably. And six have joined to date, and 3 additional have done first reading of their ordinance, so they will be joining.
I would
so
venture
9
to
total.
guess that because the LA County is so big, and plus the other 9, the remaining eligible cities probably. I don't know if anybody sat down and actually calculate how much KWA that each city is using, but I would venture to guess it's a fair amount of the LA County market already. That's already in.
I'm sorry.
That's already planning or have joined this community choice program.
Yeah, there are a few cities that it's not. I didn't mention it in this report, but it was in one of the previous reports. There is another community choice energy program that the city of Lancaster has set up. So some cities have opted to go to that. Lancaster has joined it, and
Pico Rivera.
Pico Rivera. Thank you.
So-
Pico
so there's
Rivera has
another one
joined
in
that.
addition to this one?
Yes, there's actually 3. There's 2 that have already been formed, and a third one that may or may not form. It's kind of the one that has already been formed with Lancaster and Pico Rivera is not quite the same model that the county is using. It's more of a hybrid model where the cities shoulder a lot of the responsibility. The city actually purchases their own power and does a lot of things on their own, which we didn't think was a practical option for us because it requires we would have to hire new staff to run that program. The other one that some cities were looking at, there was originally, I think it was like 13 cities that were primarily in the South Bay and the West Side that got together and started to form a CCA a few years ago, and they got through the point of doing the financial analysis and then did not get any further. West Hollywood, I believe, was one of the cities that was involved in that originally, and they have since joined LACCE, so it's not clear if that one is going to go anywhere or not, but those are two other possibilities out there for LA County cities.
I would guess they're probably, even though the number of cities may not joining may be still quite few, I would venture to guess the capacity of the remaining cities who are not in any community choice programs are probably much less than the ones that have already either have their own generating capacities like LA City or already in some of these programs. I'll be curious or very much like to hear staff bring back at least some kind of studies of where are we in terms of the energy market, because some of the larger cities definitely use more energy than some other ones. And
I can tell you our energy consumption is going to be extremely low compared to most other cities because we're very small geographically and we have very little industrial and commercial. So our load is going to be negligible compared to a lot of other cities.
Go with the bigger. In my mind, it's always advantageous to go with a bigger bargaining group. We're small, but we can pick and choose to join the biggest one out there. And when the ones already in the program or have generating power, more than the ones that have not joined, I mean, we're left with, in my mind, a disadvantage. Because we have less bargaining power, because the other people have joined. They're bigger program, bigger energy buying power.
Yeah, but in our staff report, it indicates that it looks like the primary motivation for this LACC is not necessarily cost savings, but rather more of an energy choice, that is renewable sources. So, we have to understand, why are we joining this? Are we joining it for the primary reason that we identify or agree with the fact that we should be using renewable sources, or are we joining it to save money for our residents? It appears to me that the primary motivating factor is the former, and that is for renewable sources rather than just a cost savings, because it doesn't appear that, I haven't seen anything that would indicate that there is going to actually be a actual cost savings for anybody.
But then by joining, we're giving our residents a choice of either choosing to stay within Edison or be part of this new program.
Well, no, I thought if we join, they have no choice.
No, they do.
No,
They
they
do.
have
They could choose.
They individually can opt out?
They can individually opt out, yes. So you'll see.
Well, then you have nothing but confusion in the city. Do we stay in? Do we go out? I mean, I think they more look to us rather than now they have to make their individual choice of what they're going to do because of our decision.
The estimated cost savings was about 5% per resident.
Well, that's an estimated cost
It's an
saving.
estimate.
But
It could be more.
Could be less.
They don't expect it to be less than 3%.
Who's they?
I guess the people from LA County who started the campaign.
For the authority.
I will say that at last week's COGS meeting, I can't recall the cities, but I know there was more than 6. I'm gonna say maybe 11 that have chosen to move forward.
COG?
At COG, and that's 28 cities in the San Gabriel Valley.
So I guess maybe I have a question kind of related to sort of the ongoing discussion. For one thing, I agree with Councilmember Yu that I would like to know more information. I think right now it's kind of hard to make a decision based on what we have. But also Councilmember Chavez's point about the motivation, I think is really important, because my understanding is that JPA's decision and their objectives is going to be governed by the board, and the board consists of the member cities that are part of this JPA. So if the majority of the cities joining the JPA is doing it more for environmental reasons, like buying renewable energies. And if that's not in alignment with sort of our city goals and policies, then it probably doesn't make sense to join. But if there's a underlying motivation from the cities that we can somehow discern that they're also trying to achieve some sort of cost savings, then I would like to know whether the proportion of the unincorporated county plus these cities that have joined, is that how much percentage of that is of the remaining cities that are left under Edison's umbrella? Because I would think that at some point you reach a critical mass of cities that choose to join the JPA that makes Edison really panic. And then that's when, I don't know what's going to happen with the CPUC discussion and what Edison may do, but if what you're saying is true, then that means whoever is left back in Edison, we're going to be footing the bill for the remaining contracts that Edison has already been obligated to buy, right? So people who are left in Edison would see their rates go up also.
Unless PUC steps in and requires
right, so
LACC.
that's the uncertainty, is we don't know what that outcome is.
And I agree with you, and I think a lot can be learned from maybe looking at the history of how the county board of supervisors, or what was their motivating reasons for allocating $10 million to this. Was it cost savings, or was it renewable sources? I don't even think you need to look at the rest of the cities, since they're not in it for anything at this point. I think it's the county that is really going to be the determining factor in all this. So maybe we can do a little bit of history, or looking at some of the motivations for the county board of supervisors in approving this $10 million, and what was their discussions, or how were they leaning? They have to obviously give a reason for investing $10 million.
May I suggest that Brian can reach out to the COGS interim director, because they've done they have a lot of background on this. So Brian, if you wouldn't mind reaching out to her, and she could get you the information that
And also
William
maybe
and Tom-
Supervisor Barger too. Her office should know a little bit about this, I would think. She's been part of this,
I will say that at the COG meetings, her deputy has not really
pushed it.
shared much information.
Mhm.
Most of it has come from, Edison has come, but of course, they've been very neutral. Someone from
Well,
the
somebody's got to be pushing this.
the county is.
Oh, no, but somebody in the county, somebody on the board of supervisors, usually it's, somebody has taken the lead on this, and they've done it for a certain reason. And, I would love for the report to come back and say, yeah, the motivating factor on this was so that we can really save money, because we're getting gouged. And if that were the case, then it would be a little more attractive to me than maybe some other type of reason.
Because a lot of information, I think it was maybe from the last staff report, came from the county's CEO Office of Sustainability, if I recall. So
Yes.
I don't know, maybe there's someone there that could maybe give us more information than the flyers that they're printing out.
There are actually quite a few. Actually, I have it here. The memo they actually started. So maybe I'll talk to Brian and tell him what to look.
Okay, sounds good. And my last concern is, in the last staff report, there was also a mention that there's a provision for weighted votes on the board of
Correct.
the JPA based on population. So, like I think Director Forbes mentioned, we're probably a blip compared to these larger agencies or larger areas. So I don't quite understand how that provision kicks in, and whether, if more cities join, is it more advantageous to the smaller cities, or does LA County kind of gets to throw its weight around at every turn? That to me is not entirely clear how that provision works, because I think that would play into how we can influence the direction of the board if we choose to join the JPA.
That was part of the analysis too that we actually asked the city attorney's office to look at as well. And essentially preliminarily, on kind of a superficial level, that's I think that's kind of where we're at, is that depending on how big the JPA gets, as long as we have kind of like for like cities, the weighted vote is not as great of an impact. So, but there is that weighted vote. But if, say, cities of the size of and they're obviously not eligible, but size of a Glendale or a Torrance or others, then that impact starts to redistribute itself through that weighted voting. But if it's a lot of a lot of like-sized apples to apples, that weighted vote issue becomes less of a not as much of a concern in terms of our influence on the board.
And do we know when these potentially new rates would kick in for members of this JPA? Is there a timetable or timeline for that?
There is an implementation schedule, and it'll be phased in phases starting in July of 2018, and I believe it would get to the individual cities' residential customers. It's either January 2019 or July 2019 is when it would kick in for us. And at that time, the residents and businesses would begin receiving notice prior to it kicking in, advising them that on this date it's going to change, and they can opt out before that or at any time after that if they so choose.
Is there any way to estimate what the savings would be for our residents? A typical resident in Temple City, how much are they going to see as far as a savings on their bill, or what's projected by this JPA?
The estimate, based on the financial analysis that they did, as the mayor indicated a little while ago, is they're saying about 5%. That's
so
what they're.
You would save 5% off of your monthly bill.
Off of your monthly bill.
But remember, that's the energy cost. That's not the total cost. You can't look at the entire Edison bill and say 5% off the entire energy bill.
It's a 5% of a smaller amount.
Yes, of their total. Of their total bill, the distribution costs and other costs that you see for capital and others
So it's only 5% of the energy cost.
Correct.
So let's say your energy cost is $100 a month.
Yes.
So you would save $5. Okay.
Actually, related to that question, you mentioned that the distribution costs for Edison might go up if people or cities start leaving, right?
Well, that's a threat that Edison has started to make, even though they're not advocating. They are throwing out there that this may be a consequence.
So that distribution cost would also apply to customers who are part of the JPA, wouldn't it? So then you could potentially save 5% off of the energy side, but if Edison manages to raise
I think distribution is the same, because we're using the infrastructure is the purchase of energy costs.
Yeah,
because now we're putting us in an open market to buy energy.
Right, so the energy
but
cost
then we're
goes
still using
down.
the Edison infrastructure to
Right, so
transmit.
I'm saying a result of that is Edison could go to the CPUC and say, we need to raise the distribution cost side of things
To offset the loss.
the loss of the 5%. So is it hypothetically possible that customers will actually see a
I'm not as well versed in terms of the rules that relate to the rate cases for Edison, but again, what they've kind of publicly said during meetings is that their biggest concern is the stranded costs that they have related to the longer-term energy contracts that they've had based on a certain existing and established customer base. And if that starts to become so burdensome to them if they lose 50% of their customers or whatever else over the next several years through these various programs, then they would have to look at recovering those costs somehow.
So basically a lot of unknowns at this point.
Yeah, there's still some unknowns, yes, absolutely.
Okay, any other questions from council? Okay, I'm going to open public comment. Steve?
Got a lot to say tonight, Steve.
Mayor Sternquist, Mayor Pro Tem Mann, council members. The one thing that comes to me with Pasadena, they both share a borderline with Sierra Madre and South Pasadena. And I've seen the model for this in Texas. I got some information from some of their chambers of commerce. Some of these people, it started out with, like what we're starting out with, Edison and this county thing, and then these other companies came in and said, hey, we'll sell you energy for this price. And they shared borders, and there's like, sometimes there's like 5 or 6 cities that work within that, and you got maybe 1, 2, 3, maybe 4 choices. This is what's starting up. It's a little awkward, I would agree, Pasadena could drop water lines and try to sell South Pasadena Power when this starts, and South Pass would have three choices. The same thing with Sierra Madre. I don't know that they might do that. They just built a huge new power plant down where their power plant is in the south part of the city. They spent a lot of money on that, and I could tell you this, that this is going to open up other opportunities for competition to come in. I have no doubt. You know, even like the city of Vernon, they could turn around and sell power to Huntington Park. They could do the same thing to Bell. I mean, competition was open a long time ago, and Edison tried to block it. And I remember when we voted to open this up and got blocked for many years, and now it's starting to loosen up. What I would do is come back in 2 months, not 6 months, maybe every 2 months, to look at this, rather than 6 months. I think that's a little long. There could be a host of more cities between now and the first of the year that could join this. I know the Downey's looking at it, and, you know, I wouldn't be surprised if they joined it, you know. But like I said, I would recommend coming back in 2 months, not 6 months. Thank you.
Okay, anyone else? Jim? Thank you.
Well, good evening, Mayor and City Council and staff. What they're talking about here is basically reducing the price of energy, and part of that cost is dealing with your infrastructure. If you got plants you're going to either build or update and stuff like that, and there's also facilities that you're going to have to get rid of. Pacific Gas and Electric had a little blow up there on one of their lines, and a lot of lives were lost. So they have a lot of liabilities because of that. The other thing they're faced with is they have to do an inspection of all their lines, and that's being pushed by the federal government. San Diego Gas and Electric also has to do the same thing because they are a gas provider. They're a Sempra company, and Sempra also owns our Southern California Gas Company, and of course they have to do that too. Those are going to be incurred costs. The other thing with these gas companies is, well, that's one of the things on there, but with our Southern California Gas Company, they've got Aliso Canyon, which is a big problem. They're going to be paying a lot of money to do the remediation and plus all the lawsuits that are happening. Edison has the San Onofre Nuclear Generating Station, which has been deactivated, and that has to be decommissioned. And our electric bills for years have always had, you know, $3 or whatever a month, but that's not going to be enough. So these are all costs that I see coming on down the line, and I don't know how that's going to be incorporated in what they're proposing here, but it's cost of doing business, and it's what's reflected on our bills. And we're not really guaranteed a discount on it, and there's always a possibility of going up, and I think these would be factors that would cause an increase in our costs. So that's all I have to say.
Thank you, Jim.
Thank you.
Okay, anyone else? Okay, I'm going to close public comment. Any last council comment? Okay, can I get a council motion?
No motion.
I'd like
You
to
want
make a
me to
motion, at least. Madam Mayor, I don't know whether it needs a motion if we were to continue the conversation and bring back more information, because I don't think we actually need a motion because I honestly, I really want to know a little bit more about it, because based on the support letter that the LA County support supervisor, actually I just sent it to you, by the way. There were a bunch of cities, and you're going from Agora Hills, you know, I don't know how many here. It probably looks like 40 different agencies, actually, they express interest from Agora Hills all the way to Torrance, South Pass, you know, I don't want to read out the list, Rosemead, San Fernando, a bunch of other cities. So
What does that mean if they expressed an interest? Have they done something to further that interest?
They actually attended
because we've actually expressed an interest by just
they
discussing.
attended the LA County's workshop or whatever.
There was a workshop?
Yeah,
Were
back
we
earlier
invited?
this year.
Earlier part of this year.
Like February or January somewhere. But anyways, I really liked I would propose to ask staff to bring back for our first meeting in December, again, to continue the discussion on this one.
That sounds like a
Because
motion.
that would still give us, should the council decides, I think still have a chance to, do we need to pass an ordinance at that time before the?
Yes, I was actually going to ask that. If there is any chance that the council wants to do this before the December 27th deadline, we will have to have an ordinance on your next agenda. Doesn't mean you have to adopt it, but if that's a possibility, we will have to do that because it has to go to second reading before December 27th, which means you have to adopt it on the 5th and do second reading on the 19th. Otherwise, you will not make the 27th.
Well, then you got your homework to do, because I'm going to need a whole lot more information to even consider this if we're going to go to ordinance at the next meeting, rather than just further discuss. So, you guys think you can put that together?
If I'm concerned that the council is looking for specifics on if we join now, it's going to cost this much money, and if we leave, it's going to cost that much money, and customers are going to save X amount of money. And unfortunately, none of those answers are available. It's not that we haven't gone looking for them. It's that the organization has literally not been formed yet. Contracts have not been signed, so there is no possible way to know what those dollar amounts are going to be.
And I can appreciate that, but if I'm making a decision that's going to affect my entire community, I like that to be based on something more than just speculation.
Yeah, unfortunately, speculation is really all there is at this point.
Well, perhaps some of the things we can try to look into are kind of like what Councilmember Chavez alluded to earlier is, can we try to nail down some of the motivating factors for the cities that have joined? And like you mentioned, do we fit that mold? You know, what is there a rhyme or
That's why
reason?
I keep coming back to. I mean, I'm looking at this list of cities, and it's so diverse and so spread out. Is it just I mean, what are their motivating factors? Are these communities who are joining because they truly believe this is going to be a cost savings to their residents and commercial businesses, or are they joining because they want to join the movement of renewable energy?
What we could possibly do is we could have someone come and talk to us, and we could schedule a special meeting if you would be so inclined to have a special meeting and get the information specifically from the county.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know
Before
that,
the
I don't know that a county representative is necessarily going to be the best one to come and talk to us, because we know where they're going to come from.
Most definitely. She's done a lot of research on it.
Yeah, I would feel
and
more comfortable with getting some unbiased opinion rather than,
I think she would be a good source for us.
I can contact her tomorrow and see how quickly, obviously we get through the Thanksgiving holiday, and see
Sure.
if early next week, sometime next week, we could do a quick special meeting or just a discussion with her.
Well, while you may argue that the county may not be the total unbiased, but they're the one that started the program. I think it's good to at least reach out to them, understand what they're talking about. Because there is a business plan, because, I mean, judging from this board letter here, which is dated January 31st, 2017 from the Board of Supervisors, they have had a number of workshops and stuff that attended by a number of agencies. So at least we should look at review the presentation, and perhaps talk to the few cities like Councilmember Chavez had mentioned. At least talk to folks. Why is Alhambra joining? I mean, what's in it for them that they see it's important for them, or maybe just review their council record, why they pass. I mean, there might be we can glean from it why these cities sees advantageous.
If you contact Marissa, she'd also be able to give you an update as to the other
The latest.
cities have joined, and she might have that information from the cities that joined also, because she's had discussions with all of them instead of calling all this different cities.
So what I'll do, based on the direction I'm hearing, or what I can do, is contact the CEO's office of Sustainability, the San Gabriel Valley COG, see if they can either do a special meeting for us kind of before, see how quickly we can get that done, I'll send out some emails tomorrow before the Thanksgiving holiday and see what they have to say, and then first thing Monday, see what we can gather together.
She might have some added information too.
Yes.
That she could send to you by email.
Yeah.
And you could maybe forward to us.
I'll email her tonight too.
Okay.
Mayor, if I could just ask, since there's such a short timeline between now and when the city would have to act to join the Community Choice Aggregation, JPA, if we're coming back at the first meeting, does the council have any desire to have the documents that you would need to introduce prepared and on your agenda? Obviously, there's no commitment to go forward with them, but if for some reason you decided that meeting, yeah, we definitely want to join, we're too late if we don't have the documents ready.
I would think that would be the best thing to do. How about you? Yes, William?
I think we should keep the option open.
Tom?
I have no problem with it. Like I said, you can do that. It's just that, that obviously we'll just make a decision based on whatever information we may have.
Still would
But
be
it doesn't hurt to be prepared.
That's right. Still would be no obligation. You wouldn't have to go through with the first reading if you didn't want to, but
Okay.
if you do, we really should take this precautionary step.
Well, just one more question. Wasn't there some talk, I thought at our last time we discussed this, about extending that open period?
We'll talk to the JPA as well.
Because I would think that
if you'd like,
if
for
they don't get a
example,
lot of cities join, maybe they might want to extend that a little bit.
we can ask that question as well.
And that way we wouldn't be so much under the gun, but I don't know. They may just say no.
We'll go both paths.
Yeah, it wouldn't hurt to ask.
Or maybe it's just a matter of expressing interest, not necessarily.
Exactly. Maybe even if it's
I don't know what
if
it
it's not the
takes.
formal step, maybe it's an interim step that we can take,
Right.
and then they would consider then that eligible.
Yeah, maybe something that administratively the city manager can do.
Right, and then you can give me the authorization.
Be
to do
on the
that.
waiting list.
Be on a list of
Okay, we'll make that outreach as well.
interested parties. So
There you go.
So then we don't need any a motion. Eric?
No, I think I have the direction.
Give direction.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Item 10, new business, none. Communications, none.
No formal communications, ma'am.
Update from our city manager.
Mayor Sternquist, members of the council, thank you. Happy Thanksgiving to all of you and all of the community. We will be closed, City Hall will be closed this coming Thursday and Friday, reopening on Monday. Lights on Temple City, we'll have one council meeting before then, but is December 8th from 5 p.m. to 9 p.m. And the mayor will be turning on the lights, and
Can you let Santa know that?
you got it.
The last 4 years ago, Santa and I were fighting over who was going to turn on
We'll
this.
try to make sure that squabble doesn't happen again.
It was Danny.
Um,
So we agreed to do it together.
All righty.
I think in my case we did it together on each side. I don't know how.
Yeah,
how
we
you
did. I did it together.
Yeah.
Curb painting is
Sorry.
slowly going on. I'm not. Excuse me. Is actually going on at a good pace. Slowed down a little bit due to some weather, but I actually saw some of the volunteers out recently as well.
Have we received any complaints?
We've received a couple complaints, but you have been quickly remedied. One of them, we've received a few, not too many.
Okay, good.
So we've done
Manageable.
very manageable types of complaints across the board, and
Good.
and the vendors doing and the nonprofits doing a very good job out there. Temple City Boulevard is completed. You're actually starting to see the new reflective signage as well, out and about. So we're really pleased on how
I like
that's
the
working.
crosswalks. The crosswalks really look a lot better now.
Yeah, we've done. It's a good project. You'll start to see some additional signage. Not too much. We're actually going to remove some signage and replace it with some other signage throughout Temple City Boulevard over the next couple weeks, as well as we wind down that project. And that will wrap up all the pavement management activity for this fiscal year. We will be going to do the preventative maintenance on Rosemead Boulevard. Just a quick little, essentially very thin slurry seal that we'll be doing to keep that investment intact with the use of the state money, SB1 money, in the springtime. So we'll take a little break for a while for the community, and we'll be back to pavement management activities in the spring. Other than that, again, happy Thanksgiving to all of you and to the community.
Thanks.
Thank you, Brian. Update from our city attorney.
Mayor and council, I just wanted to apprise you of something that we've noticed happening and want you to have your eye open for it, and that if it happens here, to know that we'll have enough time to assess and address the situation. With the oncoming legality in California of recreational cannabis, we have noticed that there are a number of law firms. There's a California Chamber of Cannabis Businesses and a few other organizations who have begun to circulate local initiatives allowing various forms of cannabis distribution, manufacturing, or cultivation within cities. And you know, under California, citizens have the right to do an initiative in your town that essentially puts an ordinance in place, and that can be a zoning ordinance that could allow cannabis dispensaries to operate, or cultivation or manufacturing. It would have to gather the correct signatures, and then it would have to make it onto the ballot, and then of course be voted upon. But that is happening in a number of cities, and I expect that in the June election, if not in a special election in March or April, that we might see communities with these on the ballot, and we'll want to take a look at that. However, even if we received a petition, the clerk would receive a petition, city attorney's office is then obligated to do a title and a ballot summary for the initiative. Then they go out and they have up to 6 months to gather the necessary signatures. So during that time, you would have sufficient time to look at the proposed measure, decide whether it was something that's acceptable to the city, or if it's not acceptable to the city, and whether you want to do some kind of counter to that. Might not even happen here. I'm hopeful that it won't, but in case it does, we'll work out a strategy for how to deal with that. But I thought I should let you know that that is happening, and especially those of you who are frequently members of the JPIA or the COG, you might want to reach out to your colleagues and ask whether it's happening in any of their communities and what kind of strategies they're pursuing. Other than that, that's all I have for you this evening. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Council reports regarding ad hoc or standing committee meetings. Do we have any?
Mayor Sternquist, I do have one. And I believe Councilmember Yu will also help me report out on the Facilities, Public Works, and Infrastructure Standing Committee. We met recently to discuss several items. One of the items was an update on the Pavement Management Program report. So staff and our city engineer brought back and reported back to us that they've solicited several proposals from some companies to provide services to do this pavement management update report. And in the city staff's opinion was to select one particular firm that appeared to meet all the criteria that was discussed by the standing committee. And so my understanding is the city manager and city staff will be bringing this back to full council for authorization for the contract.
Yes, sir.
At a future date. And what we discussed was, I guess the timing of it is important because of the recent work we've done on Temple City Boulevard. So the report will capture that work, and it will also allow us to kind of make better policy decisions in the long term, to kind of look at, how exactly are we going to pay for these long-term costs, which we've mentioned sort of endless times in previous reports. So I think this update is timely and much necessary, and hope that if that should be the will of the council, that we could get that done. Just as a reminder, the last report was updated in 2013. So by the time this gets executed, it will be around 2018, so roughly 5 years. And we had asked our city engineer and staff and said, hey, is that an appropriate kind of cycle for a size of our city? And it appears that seems to fit the time frame of what we need. And yeah, so we hope that report comes back with some good information. The other item we discussed was a bridge preventative maintenance program that was actually on our consent calendar earlier, but just briefly, we do have several bridges in the city, particularly the ones that cross the washes, and so we usually contract with the County of Los Angeles for maintenance work on that, for inspection work, and so a lot of that funding could come out from Measure M funds, but there's also a portion of it that will have to be matched by us as a city. So there will be, I guess, a need for some sort of a budget amendment or adjustment to cover those costs. And so I believe staff will bring back the details to us at a future meeting. And
William, can I just ask you, so the county, we contract with the county to do the maintenance on the bridge or any type of work?
so there's a cyclical sort of inspection schedule, and I think we also talked about that at the committee, that it occurs in roughly 2-year cycles. It's funny because I actually know the group that does this at Public Works. But Councilmember
Yeah,
Yu?
we have a program with I guess, an agreement with the county to do. I'm sorry, we have an agreement with the county to do the biannual inspection of all the roads and sidewalks, and include our bridges as well, but not the cost to repair them, and that's what we approved tonight, was the use to join a certain federal program to help pay for the repair.
And who does the repairs?
Los Angeles County Public Works.
Okay, so we reimburse them.
Yes.
So the reason I ask is, with the Measure M funds, one of the things that we're hoping that comes out with the merger of ACE and COG
Right.
is that the Alameda Corridor East group would then be able to undertake projects like this and be competitive
Right.
and possibly be able to do those type of things at a lesser cost for
Right.
each city. So
Okay.
it's just something to keep in mind.
Sure. Well, that's good to know. And to add to Councilmember Yu's point, another important detail was staff did identify that there were some bridges that weren't eligible for Measure M funds. So that would have to come, I believe, straight out of our pocket or other sources. So that's something that would have to be brought back to council at a later date. That one's a bit more challenging.
Thank you.
But I think the grant helped pay for more, and going back to the staff report, total project cost is like $264,000, and our local share is only 35. It's a very good use of our money to leverage.
Sure.
And so staff had very wisely identified these bridges are actually eligible for the grant money. So, and the other piece of the standing committee discussion is that the staff will bring back, there are, I think, 4 bridges that are not eligible for the federal grant. So those will be coming back, and then Mr. City Manager will propose how we're going to fund it, Measure M and other source of money to pay for the bridges, to pay for the repair of those 4 bridges, yeah.
Okay, anything else?
There's also lost it. Oh, yeah. We also talk about a street light LED conversion program. A lot of our street lights are owned by Southern California Edison, and Edison is proposing to convert the high pressure sodium lighting into LED. They're proposing a program where by the energy savings will help pay for the initial first cost to convert them. So the ad hoc committee or the standing committee and staff discuss, and we're going to look. Staff is going to look into it a little bit more, relating to the quality of lighting, longevity, and also whether or not the number that they propose seems to make sense or not, because there will be some savings to us every year, but not appreciable. Well, I think it's in the range of $6,000 a year, something like that. It's over the next course of next 20 years, I think. So So I think this item will come back to the council for full consideration in the future.
Thank you. Has the Downtown Revitalization Standing Committee met? I'm just wondering about that sign on the Arcadia Temple City sign.
Yes, the Las
When is
Tunas,
that?
the Las Tunas Standing Committee, which is Councilmember Yu and Councilmember Chavez, will meet next Friday. And they will be presented with some concept ideas.
So then we'll see them shortly after.
Well, good. Yes.
Good.
Forgot I was on there.
You forgot you were on there.
It's
You
been a
saw
while
it
since
right
we met.
behind you.
But we do have a meeting next Friday, you're right.
Good.
Yes, yeah.
Okay, looking forward to seeing
Report back next.
some
Yeah,
choices
it's been a while.
there.
Yeah.
Good.
Okay. Anything else from anyone there? Okay. Council items separate from the city manager's report. Councilmember Yu, do you have anything?
I don't have anything, but just want to wish everyone a very happy Thanksgiving.
Okay. Mayor Pro Tem?
I just want to really show my appreciation for our Parks and Rec staff for that Veterans Memorial celebration, Veterans Day celebration. Very well done. I think I spoke to a couple of our vets afterwards, and they really enjoyed it. I think one of them particularly enjoyed the medley that was sung for each of the armed forces. I think that was pretty neat to have them stand up and be recognized. I thought that was really, really neat and very touching. And so I just want to thank them for that and wish everybody a happy Thanksgiving.
Councilmember Chavez?
Thank you. I too would like to thank staff and our Parks and Rec for our great Veterans Day celebration. Unfortunately, I missed most of it. I was working that morning, but I did get there and a chance to talk with everybody, and I know everyone I talked to said they had a great time and it was a great event. So I want to thank everyone for that. It's become quite a tradition now, I think, in our city, and hopefully it will remain so. Just real briefly, I know we're getting late, but I just wanted to talk a little bit about some of the goings-on at our California JPIA. I know we've talked about JPAs tonight a little bit. And just as a side note, you know, the city has been part of other JPAs before. If you remember, we were part of the for animal control.
That's right.
That one didn't quite work out so well, unfortunately. Others have, but you know, the one we've talked about tonight, you know, obviously it'd be great if it was a success and we were part of that success. So you just, you know, you never know. And a lot of times you do go in with a lot of questions and unresolved issues, but you know, that's part of the, I guess, the risk of being part of that. But obviously one of the JPAs that we do are part of it, which is our Joint Powers Insurance Authority that we belong to. As many of you know, I'm on the executive committee for that authority. A couple of the things that we do there, of course, one is, as many of you know, we settle claims that members present to our authority, claims for personal injuries, workers' compensation, things like that. But the other thing that we do also is to set policy on how the authority operates. Similar to what we do as a council, and we set policy for the city, we set policy for the JPA. So one of the things that we did at the last meeting is we had our yearly, what is called retrospective adjustment. And basically what that does is it determines what the annual contributions are going to be for the coming year. And it reallocates costs among the members. And there are three guiding principles that we use. One is the fairness to the members, solvency, of course, to the JPIA. We obviously want to remain solvent so that we can pay those claims, and also simplicity to keep things sort of simple. Although saying that, it's taken me now a couple of years just to kind of figure out what they're really talking about, but there is a certain learning curve. But, you know, it does come with experience, of course. And just remember, and those in the public, you know, it's like an insurance company, but it really isn't. We're more of a risk pool. We have approximately 128 members, and we pool together and determine, you know, take on risk management and of course, how each member handles their risk management issues in their city is very determinative of what they're going to end up paying and the rates that we pay. Of course, just like insurance companies, it can be claim driven. But kind of a little background, because I know the question came up before, how do we determine how much we pay? Well, basically, it's determined by each member's risk management losses and share of payroll. That's how we evaluate how the rates are going to be, and it's relative to other members. So for example, if a member has 1% of the pool's payroll and 2% of the pool's losses, then our share is going to be somewhere in between those two amounts, so maybe 1.5%. Okay, so that's kind of generally how it rolls. But they look at these numbers and they kind of go back like 5 years, because it takes a while to settle claims, obviously. So we don't have the exact numbers. So it's kind of a rolling 5-year data that we look at. And so every year we do this, and we do have caps on the amount of how it can go up. Our annual contribution can never go down more than 15%, but it can never increase more than 30%. So there are caps, no matter how many claims you have. So of course we're rarely ever by either one of those figures. Most members have anywhere between a 5 to 10% change, either up or down every year. Okay. So this year, in the liability portion of our 128 members, 117 are going to receive a refund or have a zero increase. 11 of our members had an additional payment to come up with because of the claims.
South Pasadena?
Maybe. I don't remember the exact ones, but could be. Yeah, in fact, I think South Pasadena does have to pay some more money. Workers' comp, we have 109 members of workers' comp. 75 are going to receive refunds. 34 of them had additional payments. I'm proud to say that because of our risk management procedures that we use in our city, that this year Temple City is going to get a refund in both areas. And so it's not actually a check they write for, it's actually a credit they apply to next year's premiums or payments. So we're going to get about $25,000 back on the liability and about $13,000 to $14,000 back on the workers' comp.
Oh, good.
So again, and that says a lot to our staff, to Brian, those who work in our risk management, and they do a really good job and working with JPIA and making sure that we solve problems beforehand. And that includes issues like we've talked about before, sidewalk repairs, tree removals, anything having to liability or workers' comp claims. And we do a pretty good job. We do a lot of preventative medicine around here, and it's reflected in what we pay. So I thought that was good news. I thought I'd like to share that with you. And what I'd like to do, and I should have been doing this all along, but as I said, you have a certain amount of learning curve. But what I would like to do every month as things are maybe of importance to the city, changes in the way we operate. Of course, I can't share the claims information because that's close. That is the best part. That's the closed session, unfortunately, part of it. But the rest of the stuff I certainly will share with you. So other than that, I just want to wish everybody a happy Thanksgiving as well. So
Thank you, Tom.
you're welcome.
Just want to wish everyone a happy Thanksgiving. I don't think the Veterans celebration could have been nicer. Again, a shout out to Athens for providing the food. Karina from Golden Eagles, they provide that flyover at no cost to the city, and it's just beautiful.
I heard we had a few flyovers again.
We had a few. But, yeah, that is just such, we're a small city, but we do things really well, and we do them big. So I couldn't be more pleased with that. Just want to give a brief update on the library fundraising. To date, we have commitments of about $65,000. So our threshold from 50 has gone up to 100,000, and that's the magic number now. But I wanted to let council know, as well as the public, that the ad hoc decided that we would do sales of bricks, and probably would be outside of the library on the pathway.
In the ground?
In the ground.
Okay.
Sort of like the gazebo.
Oh,
Pretty
okay.
similar. And for residents or individuals, the bricks are $150, and we already have quite a few of those that have been purchased. And that's not included in the $62,000. That's sort of a separate pot right now that'll all.
Have we advertised that? I haven't seen anything.
Well, I am now.
Oh. How did you get 100, how did you get a whole bunch of people? They just,
Well, because
is there
Lucy
somewhere,
was kind
there's nowhere we
enough
can
to-
sign up yet, though, right? There's,
Well, I have, yes, right.
oh, you
now
have?
I
Oh, okay, all
so-
right. I should wait, I guess,
Happy
so.
to pass them
All right.
out, but
They will be available at City Hall, though, I'm assuming.
they will be,
All right.
they are available at City Hall on the city website, in both English and Chinese. Brian is working on sending them out to all the schools except for the high school, I think. The elementary schools take home a weekly packet, so it makes it, the high school kids kind of dump the information. So to the elementary schools, if you're a business, a private business, or an organization like Kiwanis, Women's Club, we're encouraging you to buy the larger brick, and that is $500. So we have a couple of those that have already been purchased also. So I think we're well on our way to that $62,000.
Can individuals buy the larger brick, too, if they wanted to?
You can for sure.
No, I know I can, but I mean,
Yes.
can anybody else?
Yes, or
They're
they
not
can-
limited to
or
just
they can
commercial.
buy three.
You have 3 or 4?
Well, they'd have to have 3 businesses though.
Oh, okay, yeah, there you go.
Because we wanted to make the distinction.
All right.
So, and I'll just give you an example why. The Women's Club, a lot of the Women's Club members said, oh, I want to buy a brick. And then the president, just thinking, said, oh, well, we'll just buy one for $150 for all of you. And I'm like, well, no, that's not going to work because that doesn't increase the balance. That kind of decreases it a little bit from if you bought a brick. So that's where that came from. But, so we have a few of those sold also. And just a huge shout out to our city attorney, Burke Williams, who made a very substantial donation and was actually the catalyst and the leverage for all the other people that I met with. So thank you very much, Eric. Athens recently has made a large donation also to the library. So I just cannot believe how willing people are to give money. I mean, just for a great cause, and they just really love our city, and they love literacy and reading. So from the bottom of my heart, I can't say thanks enough. And to anyone who's interested in the audience, wants to buy a brick, perfect birthday or Christmas gift. You can buy a brick, and then the city, Brian doesn't know this yet, but we will address a card to the person you're buying the brick for that says thank you for helping. So, right, Brian?
Yes.
Yes. And I want to thank Brian. He's been a real big help with helping me adjust the forms numerous times for donations.
So like the gazebo, the brick has the person donating's name on it, or?
Yeah, so for example, I have a brick out there that I don't remember what it says. I think it's at Sternquist family, and it has our name. And I know the council bought a brick at the time, and we bought it. Do you recall? We each paid
I don't
a small
remember.
portion, and I think it said from the council something, the year or something.
So you do a large council brick?
No, it's a small brick, the same size.
I'm just kidding.
No.
Just kidding.
But,
There was no option, it was just one.
It was just one brick.
No, I'm talking about the new library.
Oh, the new library, yes. So you could buy one for William. William could buy one for Aiden from mom and dad for his birthday, right? So anyway, enough on bricks, and just happy Thanksgiving, and this meeting's adjourned. Oh,
Public comments.
Wait, do we
Reimbursement.
have anyone who
Reimbursements.
wants to speak to me? Lucy?
I'll make it quick.
16, you got a 16, too.
Oh, my gosh.
Reimbursement.
In response to what City Attorney mentioned about the cannabis law, for our 2018 topics for Neighborhood Watch, we will be addressing this issue, and because it's a dynamic issue, the deputies will be doing their research as they go along. If something happens, where what the Attorney Vail mentions, if that happens, please do let the Neighborhood Watch group know, because that's a great forum for us to talk about, so that people know this is coming, this is happening. I'm pretty sure most of the residents that do go to our Neighborhood Watch meetings do not want to see any cannabis dispensary or anything related to that in our city. So we are here to support that movement against. Thank you.
Thank you. And that would have to come before the vote of the people, correct? Okay. Jerry?
Yes. Good evening, Mayor, council members, Jerry Jambazian. I'd just like to publicly thank Assemblymember Ed Chow and Senator Ed Hernandez for donating 40 turkeys to our Kiwanis Club, and we distributed them to needy families in Temple City. Believe it or not, with a median income of around $70,000, we do have some needy families in Temple City, so it went to them, and we were happy to do it. The other thing is, I just want to publicly thank Public Works or whatever it is for Temple City Boulevard and the work that was done there. I remember driving up from Lower Azusa to Las Tunas and be scared out of my wits sometimes, because I think that street was resurfaced at the time that I think Hugh Riley was city manager at that time. And the lanes were striped so close to the curb where cars were actually parked that there wasn't a whole lot of room there. It'd be pretty scary driving up there. And now it's just beautiful. Everything has enough room, and it's just wonderful. The streets are paved really nice, and I'm just happy that it's striped well. The curbs look spectacular that are painted with the numbers on it. And I don't know how far they've gotten now, but what I've seen of it looks very nice. So thank you for the work that's going on in Temple City.
Mayor Sternquist, Mr. Forbes, Mr. Kair, our inspectors from TransTech deserve the credit for all the work on Temple City Boulevard. They've all worked collectively really well up until, and I was giving you some updates and some challenges that they were facing trying to address those issues. So Mr. Forbes, Mr. Kair, Mario, I can never pronounce his last name correctly, one of our inspectors did a fabulous job.
Great. Yes, thank you. Okay, reimbursement, there
actually is, one amendment to that. There is one on the warrant register for Councilmember Fish, actually, of $43 for transportation costs related to JPIA. We'll have it on the next agenda, but it is, for the record, it is on the current warrant register, but we will have it as part of the agenda during the next agenda. That was oversight on our part, so thank you.
Okay. So there is one for $43. Additional public comments on items not listed on the agenda? Well, we did that ahead of time. We're just moving too quick. And I think that's it, right, Tom?
That's it?
That's it. We're adjourned.
Happy Thanksgiving.